Hey there, Antiqua. How you doing today?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, Chris. It's great to be here. Hi, everybody.
Oh, you're welcome. It's going to be an epic show for those of you. Hunker down, stick close to your monitors and your headphones because Antiqua has got a wealth of knowledge to share with you today, and I'm sure you're going to find this is going to be an epic episode. As we always do, we're going to start off with Antiqua's heroine's journey. We're going to get a quick overview of, where she came from, that turning point she had in her life, and then the aftermath. So, Antiqua, why don't you give us a quick overview of your journey?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to try to boil it down and actually make it quick, Chris. I was really born into this journey. So I had every reason to not like myself, to believe that I was literally a piece of meat, and to be angry for the rest of my life. As my counselor once told me, every excuse to be angry forever, and it's totally okay. And it wasn't okay. It wasn't okay for me. I wanted to live a happy life, a life on purpose. When I was in my first 10 years of life, I went through sexual and physical abuse. In my second 10 years of life, I went through the rebellion, the aftermath, the flashbacks, the basically PTSD that comes from childhood abuse, even though I was out of the abuse itself and into the recovery mode. In my 20s, the next 10 years, I had cancer and adrenal failure. I suffered from depression, and rightfully so, and major food allergies that affected my depression and my energy levels as a whole. All while really teaching about this self-love concept of self-care and getting healthy, and how do I do that, and how do you do that naturally. In my 30s, I was really about honing the skills and sharing the skills that I learned through those other phases of my life about how to stand out, how to be visible, how to stand in your truth, how to own your value and your charisma and your confidence, even when you don't have that solid foundation of a magnificent childhood to stand on. And so I honed those skills. In 2011, I became America's premier expert in self-care. I've become a best-selling author. I have 3 wonderful companies, and I work with people personally and privately to help them step into their genius, really see themselves as the individual and the person of worth that they are, no matter what their history is, because I can relate to many kind of negative, crappy histories, and cut the crap, basically, and shine their light, put their genius into the world, however that means to them. Sometimes it means being a really great parent, and other times it means becoming a best-selling author, or speaking on stage, or being a coach, or doing something like I do.
Yeah, that is epic, and it's what I found, and this is one of the reasons for those of you watching, this is one of the reasons I wanted to have Antiqua on the show, because what I found is that people who've gone through as much as Antiqua has, that they are more empathetic than a lot of people, because they've done that, and they can help so
Yeah.
many. They can help people, in more ways than I could even count. So, it's sad what you had to go through, but it's great that you have turned it into something that you can help other people let their light shine, and really make sure that other people have, the epic life that they deserve. So let's get
Totally.
into it. Let's go ahead and really go back to the beginning. And
Mm.
um, at this point with the beginning, and I know you've had a lot of struggles, what I would say is this is let's focus on the time before the turnaround, and kind of the time wherever you want to start, and the time that led up to the turnaround, and what was the, I'll say, most impactful thing, and the most impactful thing that happened during the beginning. Let's start there.
Oh, before the turnaround, the biggest most impactful thing that happened to me was I was I was abused. I was defined by the outside world, and and although in my own personal experience, there was a lot of confusion around that. I had a sense of love in my home, as well as a lot of criticism. I had a sense of I was told you can do anything and you have to be responsible, and taught the spiritual truths. And at the same time, I was beaten each night and went through different cases of molestation all before the age of 12. And so it was very confusing to me to know who to believe and what to believe. I leaned into school a lot, and school always had become my mecca, my place of study, all the way through high school. By the time I was out of the abuse and everything, became my go-to place for my worth. Another place that I shined was on stage. I was a performer, I'm a singer, and so I'd get on stage and I'd get on TV and I'd get on things in elementary school, and I'd be noticed and people would see my worth. And so those things really helped me to start kind of looking at the fact that that other things define me, and it's not all bad.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't yet know to define myself, which is what we'll talk about later today, but I did know that the definitions weren't all bad, and I did know that my own worth wasn't just as a toy.
Yeah, and that is so, and I'll say this again and again and again and again in case I don't, because we get in such a great conversation. Thank you for being so open and sharing. The biggest thing, and the biggest thing that I picked up from there was that because of everything that was happening to you, the outside world was defining you, and I think we all go through that a lot. We all go through the fact of letting other people define who we are versus us defining it ourselves, and it's easier in a situation like yours to let other people define you because that's what is going on in a relationship. I mean, everything, and let's face it, the relationships and the challenges that you went through, you weren't defining any of that. I mean, you had no control over that. Everybody else was defining you. So it was, it's epic to see the fact that, that you realize that, and that you look at that, and that's one of the reasons why, if you're watching this right now, that's one of the reasons why you need to contact Antiqua and need to look at how to working with her, because she's been where other people have defined her, and now she's defined herself, and it's it's an incredible definition. You're going to get a chance to see that going forward. I've gotten the privilege to see it in the background for a while now, and that's why she's on the show. So it's interesting because I guess one question I'd have would be, and it might be difficult, but if people, is there a way, looking back on it now, is there a way that you could have understood that other people were defining you sooner than you did? And could you have asked yourself, is there a question? I guess let me phrase it a different way. For those of us who are watching and questioning and maybe don't know if anybody else is defining us, and this we're going to talk about, I'm sure we're going to talk about a lot of this later on, but is there one question, since everybody's in the moment right now, is there one question that somebody could ask themselves to figure out if they're in this place of not being self-defined?
Yes, for sure. And let me explain self-defined. Self-defined can be, I call it hiding behind the middleman, and the middleman is three different things. One, the middleman can appear as somebody else, like your mother defining you, your father defining you, your boss, your friends, your husband, your wife, your best friend. Oh, you're this way. I know you better than you know yourself. Have you heard that before?
Yeah.
It's like, no, you don't. No, I'm still figuring myself out. You don't know me better than I know myself. But it's, so there's that. And then there's defined by circumstance. So this is still outside definition. This is still loss of power in defining yourself, in the sense that something else is defining you. So if that something is taken away, then it's gone. So, you know, it might be I am a survivor of sexual abuse. So that becomes my definition point, right? Or I've worked with many women who are very high up leading and leaders in AA. Like they're absolute thrivers. You know, they've been in recovery for years, but their childhood abuse turned them into, you know, drugs and figuring things out, and then they got out of it, and now they help people. But they define themselves as I am a survivor of blah, blah, blah. Another way that looks like is I'm a PhD. I'm a best-selling author. I am a 2001 America's Premier Expert. You know, however you want to define it. That is how the outside world is defining us. And those things are really great and good for the outside world and for our bio, right? To say, oh, listen to me, there's credibility here, I've done my research. But they're still outward definitions of circumstance. So to answer your question, the question that you'd ask yourself, well, I'm going to answer it twofold. One, could I have answered it for myself at my young age? No. And because I say no, because we know that before the age of 7, the brain is literally sucking in the world, and we're designed and supposed to be defined by our outside circumstances, which is why being a parent is such a beautiful gift, because you get to define that person. That's the brain, the mental brain. So by the time I kind of started figuring this out, I was 13 when I went home and I told, and my life changed in a week. And that's when I started bringing people home, starting with myself, to their own body. And that's when I started telling and being the visibility coach and sharing this message. So I don't know for me if I could have said anything earlier, but I did still look for that outside approval for the next 10 years or longer. The next part of that is, what question could you ask as an adult? As an adult right now, is the world defining me, or am I defining myself and living that definition in the world, which are two very different things.
Yeah.
And that would be when you introduce yourself, what gives you credibility?
Okay, excellent. So what I'm going to do is, for everybody, we might touch on this later on, but I think it's a good place to leave you with something, because if you want more about that and we don't talk about it later, you're going to have to get in touch with Antiqua to have her tell you more. And I think people should get in touch with you. So let's get into the turning point, because it's interesting. It sounded like you started even to talk about the turning point. And the turning point in this whole thing for you came still when you were a child, if I understand things correctly, and that's beautiful. It's epic, because a lot of children suffer with what you went through their entire life, or for a lot longer than their childhood. So as far as the turning point goes, tell us a little bit about it. I mean, you know, what maybe. In fact, here would be a good question, because I think people will resonate with it. What clicked in your head that it was finally time to? What was that seminal moment that clicked in your head that it was finally time to take action?
I wish that there was a time, or something that clicked in my head. It might sound really strange, but I'm just going to tell you the straight facts and the truth of what happened that day. So we had horses, and we had a horse stable. And this another older gentleman decided that I should be his girlfriend, and he tried to kiss me, and I knew it was coming next. Like I had been down this road before, and I was 13 at the time, and somehow, and I don't even know how, because I know everything was locked, I got out of the horse stable, and I ran into this field in the back called Dry Creek in North Glen, Colorado, which is now full of houses. And I hunkered down and hid, and I was just crying, and I was like, Lord, not again. I can't do this again. Like, I can't do it. I can't do it again. Please, you know, help me. and I was crying, begging him to just kill me, take my life, get me out of it. And an image of the Lord appeared in front of me, how I see the Lord, and said a couple words, go home and tell. And somehow I got up and walked the mile home, walked in and told my adopted father to what happened. And even though he had molested me, like, I don't know, like, he got mad and he went and he defended me to this guy and came home and said, what else has happened? And I told him about some of the boys at school grabbing my chest, and he proceeded to call the parents of my friends, and it humiliated me. It was humiliating. So I called him into a back room and I said, you know, how would you like it if I went to your work and I told everybody what you did to me? And it had been 2 years, but my mother was listening. She had stood outside the door for some reason, and, you know, he responded, that wouldn't be good, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, don't do that to my school friends. Like, don't do that to me. And he, I think he got the point. But then when we came out, my mom said, what happened? And I told her, and she said, I've heard this before. And I said, yeah, I've told you before. Yeah. And he couldn't deny it because he just didn't. And we were out of the house within a week and pressed charges and, you know, so forth and so on. And the conversation on both sides of my family started about molestation and abuse.
Well, and so that's what is so epic about you and your situation, is that unlike a lot of people, your family eventually stuck behind you and made positive changes, and you made positive changes in your life, and you refused to be a you know, a victim any longer. The amazing part for those of you out there watching, you know, unfortunately for everybody, you're not going to get the sign from God, or you're not going to get the burning bush, or right. You know, you're not going to get that. But if you do,
I've never got it again. I pray for it all the time, and I've never got it again.
But if you do, you have to listen to it. It's like the old story about the guy that's going through a flood, and the water starts to rise, and the fire department comes along and says.
Story.
Yeah, so first the fire department comes along and says, "Sir, you must evacuate." And he said, "No, you know, God will save me." And then the water gets a little bit higher, and, you know, somebody else comes along and says, "Sir, you need to come. You need to come with a get in the boat. You need to come with us." And he says, "No, God will save me." And finally the water's all the way up to the top of the roof of the house, and he's on the roof, and a helicopter comes over and says, "Sir, we need to get you out of here." And he says, "No, God will save me." And then the water gets higher than the top of the house, and he dies, and he's up in heaven. He's looking at God, and he says, "Hey, God, you know, what did I do wrong? I said I lived in faith, and I said you were going to save me." And God looks at him and says, "I sent you a car, a boat, and a helicopter. What more do you want?" So the whole point is that you might not get the burning bush, but if you do, like Antiqua, you listen to it and move on. And if you don't,
But I had to take action. Like, I had to go home and tell. And I was just reflecting a few weeks ago, like, I've never had a job where I wasn't bringing people home. Like, whether I was, the couple jobs that I've done outside of health and beauty and wellness, where I was bringing people home physically to their physical bodies to love themselves, have been, I worked for Ryder Trucks, you know, moving people home.
Right.
I worked in real estate, moving people home.
There you go.
And the other thing that God told me to do was tell. And besides writing and speaking and telling and coaching, which is all really about sharing and visibility and doing things like we're doing right here, right now, the only other jobs that I've had are in marketing, you know, and shooting videos, doing voiceover work, and literally selling ads for the local paper and stuff here. So so it's really funny. I've never done anything. I'm qualified. Like at that day, God said, okay, you're qualified to go home and tell. And that's all I've been doing for the last 30 years is helping people to come home to themselves and tell.
Yeah, and that's a great segue into the aftermath, because the aftermath, thank goodness for you, the aftermath has been so much longer than the beginning or the turning point. You know, for a lot of folks
Yeah.
that are watching today, whether it's physical abuse or whether it's just struggle, whether it's struggles in business, they've probably been going through that beginning and that turning point a whole lot longer. The beautiful part is your aftermath has been so great. And before we get into your aftermath, what I want to say to everybody is you definitely need to listen and stick around, also watch the rest of this, because, you know, Antiqua's aftermath has been 30 years and now growing. And I don't care if you're 70 or even 80 years old. With the technology we have today, your aftermath can be that long too. So stick around and listen. So let's talk about the aftermath, and let's talk about, um, you know, it's we heard the beginning of the aftermath, which was your family came together and you know, started to support you. What happened after that, and how did that start to grow, so to speak?
Well, for me, it's been a real growing experience because I did have to deal with the flashbacks and all of that. So there was a lot of healing that has taken place over the last 30 years, and in the 30 years of me really having to come home to myself. And my body went through a lot of breakdown. Like I said, in my 20s, I had cancer. I've had adrenal failure because my fight, flight, or freeze system was off. I suffered from those flashbacks and PTSD symptoms. And for the most part, it's gone. And that's a miracle. And you can read more about my story in From Failure to Success, or God's Miracles, or Holistic Fashionista's Memoirs, or my personal book, From Bondage to Happiness. All can be found on Amazon and also on my website and my bookstore. But the aftermath that I feel like we should talk about today is really this place of stepping into your purpose and recognizing your purpose and defining yourself. And that aftermath actually has only happened in the last, since I was 33, so like 8 years,
Okay.
8 or 9 years, and or 7 or 8 years. And it came from getting through this place of having to rush to take care of my body. My body no longer needed to be my main focus. It wasn't about to die. It wasn't anything. It came from not having to rush any longer and knowing those secrets that I now teach my clients to control my mind. So I was no longer struggling with the negative thoughts and the old stories as much. I knew when I got them how to handle them and how to eliminate them and how to reprogram my brain. So I've been reprogramming that 0 to 7-year-old brain with positive thoughts, with thoughts of redemption, basically.
Oh,
And
go
yeah.
ahead.
And so I've learned how to do that, and I do that with clients. So I was doing that for a couple years, and so that was complete. And then I have had this opportunity to learn how to feel. Because oftentimes, if you're raised in a tumultuous relationship or in a war-torn area, a lot of my clients are from places that were war-torn. But whether it was in their house personally, in just their house, or literally their whole country, that we don't know how to feel. We know how to manage and feel sadness and depression and anger and fight and rebellion and all those kind of what they call lower vibrations, but we don't know how to manage the higher vibrations because they weren't safe. If you're really, really happy, oh, keep it down. If you're really vivacious and loud, oh, the bombs could go off, Yeah. So how do you retrain yourself to, as Gay Hendricks says, take that upper limit off and really live a life that's safe, that is also learning to be more and more fun. So I'm continuously learning how to raise my own cap on joy and fun and abundance and wealth and experience. And it's constant for me. It's still something that's expanding. There's still more joy to be filled. I definitely am not scared of the sadness. Like some people that only know how to feel joy get like, oh, I can't be sad, you know. Like that's not something for me or my clients. Like we're not really scared of that. We're used to that. We're more, how do I do this really happy thing? So I started training myself on how to be happy and how to take that cap off my ceiling, how to step into the wealth journey, how to step into my money story, how to change the emotional state of my being into a high vibration. So then universe, God, whatever the world does, as quantum physics has been teaching us, can really deliver back to me more of what I really desire, and that is more of these high vibrational, high visibility experiences to share my message and to have my clients share theirs.
Yeah, it's amazing what happens when you clear the junk out. I talk to people a lot, and people, even if it's something as simple as having way too many bookmarks on your in your internet browser, or having too many books on your bookshelf, or having too much furniture in the house. People don't realize how clutter, whether it's outward or inward, can really affect can really affect what you're doing, and can really stop you from receiving the gifts that you're meant to receive. So
Yeah.
and I think that's the one thing, as we start to wind down the heroine's journey of this part of the show, and as we start to, like I said, start to kind of wind down, I think it's the one thing that I want all of our listeners and viewers to take away, is the fact that as you go through your turning point and your aftermath, you're gonna get the chance, and it's not have to, but it's get the chance to be different and get the chance to be better, and realize that different is a scary place, but realize that different, if you're going through all of these challenges, different is better. And that the rest of your life is going to be better once you get through it.
Yeah.
Before we go ahead,
we don't, like, the last thing that I really want to say is that I ask my clients, and one thing that is really important, my free gift at my website, AntiquaLisha.com, is 237 Ageless Beauty and Timeless Mind truths. They're timeless truths for relationships, for mind, for this high vibe, so you can like tap into how to develop these things within yourself, because we don't know what we don't know. Yeah. Like, we just don't know, and it's okay not to know how. I didn't know how to be happy. I didn't know how to live a delicious, pleasurable life. Even though my name is Lisha. As we were joking before, like, I had a negative connotation with the word delicious. I had to make peace with that. Like, what does a delicious life look like to me? What do I really want out of that? And what does it still look like? And I'm still learning how to feel into that. And that's where the real fruit, I've heard, comes from, and I've experienced it too, but I've heard it on even a more epic level than I'm even at right now, that I look forward to.
Epic, yeah. It's funny because there's so many things I could say right now, and from the viewers, they know I just talk forever. But this is Antiqua's show today, so I'm going to keep my mouth shut. But anyway, well, this has been epic, and we're going to take a very, very quick break, about 30 to 45 seconds, but you want to stick around, because after the break we're going to come back and we're going to talk to Antiqua about her area of expertise, and all about having a high vibe for high visibility.
To watch the rest of this epic episode now, click on the link below the video. Do it now, you'll be glad you did. Are you still here? What are you waiting for? Watch the rest of this epic episode now by clicking on the link below the video.